Hi dear students, how are you? I hope you're fine. Today we're gonna have section 2 of the psychological methods. So let's start. Okay, we have here what? We have here more than one method the psychologist can use for his research. He can use here something called survey. Survey? Yes. Survey means what? I'm gonna, yes, collect data. So when you collect data or information, you're gonna use the interviewing method or distributing questionnaires. Yes. So we have here two methods in the survey method. So survey method, we have two methods inside it. We have interviewing people orally or distributing questionnaires so they can fill in. Scientists must carefully choose which groups of people they wish to study. So as a scientist, I have to choose my group that I want to make the study on them. They are called target group. Let's see. So the main idea here, it's one way to gather for the survey. It's one way to gather together information, to collect information, is by asking people directly or by using the questionnaires. So psychologists use this method to study people's attitudes and behaviors. Survey method here. Psychologists usually use a survey to, as we said, gather information about people by asking them directly. Okay, so the definition of the survey is important. Yes, it is. A survey is a series of questions. So we have more than one question or a group of questions. People are asked to answer about a particular subject. So I'm having a subject, I'm asking about it, a specific subject, I'm asking about it. Psychologists conduct surveys by asking people to fill out written questionnaires, as we said, or by interviewing people orally. Okay, so this is important, yes. The findings of interviews and questionnaires may not be completely accurate. Why? Why? Because we have here people may not be honest about their attitudes or behavior, so they can lie easily. People may limit their responses for privacy reasons. I'm not going to tell you all of my behavior or all of my attitudes. Why? Because it's private to me. People may say what they think the interviewers want to hear. So people can just say, if I ask you a question as a psychologist, so he can answer me a response that he thinks I want him to answer with. Okay, so let's complete. I want to explain this before we go to the other point. I have here an example. If I ask some people, what do you think? What do you think of the pop star Amr Deeb? So I asked them, what do you think of the pop star? So what do you think the question is? I'm telling them he's a pop star. He's a very good star. So this means that I'm giving them a hint that I want them to say he's very good star or 5-star. So this is what we mean by this point. How do psychologists conduct surveys? This is the question may come like this. So by asking people to fill out written questionnaires or by interviewing people orally. So populations and samples to accurately predict an outcome. Psychologists study a group represent the target population. So target population, what does it mean? Target. It's our goal. The whole group that they want to study or describe. The whole group, it's the target population. The target population includes only people who are relevant to the survey. Okay, of course, they are the people that I want to make the survey on or take the survey, because it would be costly and difficult to interview all the population, every member of the target population. It's very hard, by the way, to ask all the target population. It would be very costly. It would be difficult. So researchers study a sample. Yes, a sample. A sample means what? Is only part of the target population. So from the target population, I'm going to choose a sample. So at this point, please, what's a target population? I have to remember the whole group that the researcher want to study or describe. And this is a survey method example to have here questions in your class, and divide the class into half. I'll give half of the class the questions in a questionnaire, and the other half I will just interview them orally, and then make the analysis and see the differences between here the questions or the survey. Selecting samples. Let's complete. Psychologists select samples scientifically. It means it's based on scientific here way to ensure that the samples accurately represent what the populations and the population that they are supposed to represent. So this means what? This means that the samples here must be representable. Representable means what? They represent the real people that I want to make the survey on. A sample should be as similar as possible to the target population. So, how can I choose the sample here? One way the scientists obtain an accurate sample, a correct one, is to use a random sample. So, I will choose randomly, in which individuals are selected by, we know randomly, of course, here by chance from the target population. Another type of sample is stratified. Stratified sample, which consists of subgroups in the populations that are represented proportionally. Okay, a large random sample is likely to be accurately stratified even if researchers take no steps to ensure that it is. I'm here doing what? I'm doing something called subgroups from the large groups. This is called stratified. A large sample size by itself does not necessarily guarantee that the sample represents a target population. So it's not by the size of the sample. Okay, so I have to make the sample to be representable. This what I mean. Let's summarize this. What's the difference between random and stratified samples? Yes, the question comes like this. Random, chosen by chance. Stratified, subgroups or of population represented proportionally. Generalizing results. Okay, sometimes researchers do not use a sample that represents an entire population. Let's see how. So, what do you think, guys? In such cases, do you think that researchers here are cautious about generalizing their findings? Can I generalize my finding here? How can I generalize my finding if my sample doesn't represent the whole population? Researchers cannot learn about their preferences of all people by studying only one group of people, of course. Researchers cannot learn about the attitudes of, for example, let's see this example to make it more clear, of the Americans in general if they limit their observations to only men or only women. So, did you understand this now? When I say I'm limiting here my observation on only women or only men, so I'm doing what? I'm not representing. This is the sample which is not representable. It doesn't represent here all the population, the target population, or to people who live in one part of the country, or to people from one socioeconomic background. Let's have here a question. What are some limitations on generalizing results? A sample may not represent an entire population, so this is some limitation. Volunteer bias. What does it mean here? When conducting surveys, psychologists are aware that bias may occur on the part of the respondents. Bias, what does it mean, bias? Is a disposition, predisposition to a certain point of view despite what the facts suggest. So, what are you talking about? Psychologists are also aware of volunteer bias. People who volunteer to participate in studies may have a different outlook from people who do not volunteer. So, volunteers are usually more willing to disclose personal information. They may have more spare time to participate. Volunteers probably do not represent the target population. So, here in this part, volunteers are usually when I am a volunteer. So, I'm willing to disclose personal information. I'm willing to say personal information. I'm willing to do what? I'm willing to have more time to participate here. I'm a volunteer. But volunteers properly do not represent the target population. So, what's the basic problem with volunteer bias in terms of research results? Volunteers may have a different outlook from people who do not volunteer for research studies. Cultural diversity and psychology. Diversity in research. Most psychologists today appreciate the need to allow for the wider diversity of members of society in their research. What are you talking about? This has not always been the case. For example, men have been included as research study participants more often than women. Before, the participants were mostly men, and women get afraid to get in the research, okay, to be part of the research. So this led the psychologists to mistakenly generalize their findings beyond men. Many research participants were originally drawn from white men. In the USA, the research was mainly for white men. Studies that have included a more diverse population have shown that the heart disease affects women differently than it affects the men. And the African also Americans are more likely to get heart disease than whites. More diversified research on domestic violence has revealed that men and children are victims as well as women. Recent researches with members of older populations has shed light on topics of concern to the elderly. So, what might be some ways to increase the number of participants from traditionally underrepresented groups to in psychological studies? How might you and your classmates respond to a question about the effect of after school jobs on your education? How might students respond differently in a school with a different ethnic, uh, ethnic here makeup? So, guys, think about this, and we will discuss the upcoming session. Thank you for listening, and wait for me for section 3. Thank you. Bye bye.